Today we have a crazy joint replacement story for you. We're going to cue our introduction and we're going to dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Muscle Activation Schaumburg and Exercise for Life Studios, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset. And the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we have a crazy story that we want to share with you. It's one of a client who came to see us when she found out some news from doctors, okay? And her doctors had told her that she needed a full knee replacement, that she had no other options, and she was not a candidate for any other type of procedure. She was not a candidate for injections. She was not a candidate for anything else that may come up, various therapies, various modalities, really any other option. They said, you're not a candidate for any of that. The only option right now, given the structural status of your knee, is to have a full knee replacement. Now, a lot of times when this is the case, doctors want the client to try to get stronger going into the procedure. What we have seen, what doctors have seen, is that when a client goes into a joint replacement procedure and they are physically stronger, their recovery time ends up being much smoother. It ends up being much less, okay, overall. So they recover a lot faster, they recover a lot better, and the results of the joint replacement procedure end up being a lot better overall for the client. And so we often get people who come to see us, pre-surgery for that specific reason. Hey, get the muscles functioning well, get your muscles stronger, so you can go into surgery in a better place. And that was kind of the place where this particular client was at. She wanted to do muscle activation techniques, and she wanted to do strengthening to help her prepare for her surgery. Okay, so again, this was going to be a full knee replacement surgery. A lot of times we think, okay, the muscles that support the knee are going to be like the quadriceps and the hamstring. So that's what we worked on the first session with muscle activation techniques. We didn't do anything fancy. We didn't do anything, like out of the ordinary, just very straightforward, basic muscle activation techniques to get her quadriceps muscles functioning better and to get her hamstrings functioning better. Okay. The next day, she sent me a text and said that after that session, she had absolutely no pain walking upstairs, and she could walk upstairs with her feet straight instead of turned out like she had been for over 2 decades because of the structural status of her knee. That's after the first session of just getting her muscles functioning better, doing very straightforward, basic muscle activation techniques. All right. A couple weeks later, she came back in for her second session. And we worked through the same things. We worked through her quadriceps, we worked through her hamstrings. Again, very basic, very straightforward muscle activation techniques, nothing advanced, nothing, out of the ordinary, just very simple, straightforward MAT. And again, the next day, I got a text saying this time she had no pain going downstairs now. Okay, before it was going upstairs, now going downstairs, she has no pain. And she can do it without having to use the handrail. Y'all, this is life-changing for this lady, okay? This is life-changing. And it's not to say that she doesn't need a knee replacement, because by all objective measures, like the structural status of her knee still indicates that it needs to be replaced. But what we're talking about is quality of life. What we're talking about is maintaining your physical function and your physical freedom, throughout your day, throughout your week, leading up to and post-surgery, okay? And really, it's not that complex of a process to do that. But there are some really big takeaways that I want you to leave this story with. And that's really what we want to talk with you about today.
That's right. I think, when we hear stories like this, we're like, oh, that's amazing for her, right? Mm-hmm. Like it would never happen to us. But, all of us have a certain status, in our joints, whether they're like amazing, they're arthritic, they're so dysfunctional, we need them replaced. But what we do know is that when whatever status your joint is, the stronger the muscles are supporting any joint, the better that joint is going to be. We're not saying that, hey, when you get your muscles worked on, then your joints become, you know, like you're a toddler again. They're so flexible and they can do whatever and you can fall on them, they feel fine. We're not saying that. But what we are saying is to make the situation that you have going on better, stronger is always better. Stronger will always feel better. Stronger will always function better. Stronger will always recover better. Stronger will always help you go into whatever event better, whether that's a marathon or a surgery or a traveling experience. Stronger is always better. So inputting things into your lifestyle, like getting regular MAT, doing regular strength training, will always make your system better than if you didn't, no matter what you have going on.
Yeah, that really is a big takeaway of this whole story is no matter the structural state of your joints, they can still be positively influenced by improving the function and improving the strength of your muscles. Now, we haven't even gotten to traditional strengthening with this client yet, all right? And, you know, that would involve using like the knee extension machine and the knee flexion machine and, you know, really trying to increase like the force output of the muscles in a traditional sense. All we've been focusing on is step one of the process, which is increasing that communication between the brain and the spinal cord and the muscles, okay? Just increasing that communication. That's what we use muscle activation techniques for. Increasing just that onset of contraction, the ability for the muscle to contract, the ability for her to access those muscles and be aware of those muscles and be able to use those muscles kind of automatically without having to think about it. And then once we can establish a baseline like that and kind of improve that standard function for her, then we can start to increase the strength and really start to increase like how much her muscles can do and really start to increase her output for those muscles, the ability for those muscles to protect and keep her joints healthy. But to me, this is again just such a powerful testament to how influential the muscles are for your joints, regardless of the status of your joints. Like you were alluding to earlier, Julie, a lot of people feel like, oh, they'll hear a story and they'll be like, oh, that's so great for that person, but my situation's different. Oh, that's so great for that person, but my body's different. And the reality is over the last, 13 and a half years for myself, 12 and a half years for Julie, okay? We have not seen that to be the case. We really have not seen that to be the case where there's somebody that is such an anomaly that getting their muscles functioning better, getting their muscles stronger, just doesn't have the impact for them that it does for other people. And we've seen a wide variety of individuals, a wide variety of ability levels, a wide variety of how compromised somebody's system is from an autoimmune issue or from a structural issue or whatever, okay? And across the board, the thing that has held true for every single person is that when you get your muscles functioning better and when you get them stronger, your ability to do more in life increases, and your ability to do that with fewer symptoms increases, and your ability to keep doing that for a longer period of time throughout your life with fewer symptoms increases. And that's just how powerful the muscle system is.
That's right. And so our first point here is that stronger muscles will always make your situation the best that it can be. And I want to layer this with another point, is that the strength of your muscles is going to positively and dramatically improve the quality of your life and the quality of your movement, independent of the state of your joints or the state of your body. Like, for example, we're talking about a knee here, right, that needs to get replaced. So getting her muscles stronger is going to be the best thing that she can do for her knee, independent of the fact that her knee needs to get replaced. Or we also work with a lot of people with neurological issues. So getting their muscles stronger is the best option, even with a neurological issue or some other diagnoses. A really interesting story that kind of piggybacks off of this one is, I remember I had a few years back a client came in, and apparently when you have arthritis, there are like grades, the doctors have a grading scale, and she had like the highest grade, which she described to me as like, this means there's like no cartilage, it's literally bone on bone. They said nothing can happen. And when she walked in the first day, I remember thinking, wow, it looks like her knees are about to collapse under her. And I remember strengthening with MAT with her knees and then her feet. And the crazy changes that she described to me, like, she was like, oh my gosh, I can just get in the shower now, stepping over that lip, and I don't think about it. I can kneel at church and be able to get back up, and it's not a thing. Or I can just get in and out of my car. And so I did not change the grade, the level of arthritis that she had in her knee, but we changed in a huge way how the muscles were functioning. And so a lot of times we dismiss the potency of the muscle system because we're saying, well, my disc is bulged. Well, I need a knee replacement. Oh, well, I'm going to be on the surgical table anyways. Or, I have the top level graded arthritis. There's no way that we're going to change this without surgery. And sure, we might need a medical intervention, but your body also is so thirsty for some serious muscle strengthening to get that joint more supported. And again, when you do have that medical intervention, if you are needing something like that, you're going to be recovering much faster. And not to mention, our joints don't break down for no reason. Meaning there's a whole system involved with your knees breaking down or whatever joint you're struggling with. And that involves heavily the muscle system. Why is the muscle system failing and putting all this stress on your right knee, but not your left? Or on both knees, but not your ankles. So when you start strengthening the muscle system, not only is it going to improve by a huge amount the joint that you are focused on, but it's going to also help address the stuff that led to that joint getting beat up in the first place. And then when you do have that medical intervention, then you've already started dealing with the cause of the issue, and that'll only lead to more healing, more of you living your life, more you being active in the way that you want to be.
Absolutely. Okay, so how do we go about thinking about this? How do we recommend that you consider thinking about this? The first step in our mind is muscle activation techniques. Again, that is going to establish or reestablish that communication between the brain and the spinal cord and the muscles themselves, okay? When that communication is strong, it's like making sure that the battery cables of your car are well connected and well secured, okay? You can have all the torque, all the horsepower built into your engine that you want, but if the battery cables are disconnected, you're not going to be able to access it, okay? And so step one is establishing that baseline communication and then improving the threshold of how long that communication can stay online for, okay? And a lot of times this involves just having a client get up and walk around. And if their threshold for, maintaining communication is really low, just getting up and walking around can oftentimes be too much for their system. And then they're wondering, okay, well, should I go running 5 miles tonight? It's like you can't even walk to the wall and back without these muscles shutting down. So we got some work to do, but that's okay, because that's where they're at, and that's step one. Is just kind of building up, not only establishing the communication, but then building up the threshold of stress that communication can last through. Okay, the higher that threshold is, the higher their kind of stress threshold is of what that communication can last through, the more stuff you are able to do, the more stuff they are able to do with their bodies, and still maintain that communication between the brain, the spinal cord, and the muscles. All right, so that's step one for us. That's what we use muscle activation techniques for. Then we go into step two, all right? And step two involves more traditional strengthening. This is where we're using machines. This is where we're using dumbbells. This is where we're using, body weight movements or whatever it is. But we are loading the joints, we are loading the muscles in trying to improve their strength, their output in a very traditional sense, okay? But here's the thing, with that, we always need to be circling back to step one. We always need to make sure that communication is open because, again, just as, like walking or something can be too much of a stress, the more specific and the more intense we get with an exercise, the more that can disrupt that communication. That can be too much stress. And so it's always a process of establishing communication and then seeing, okay, what's going to be like too much stress for your body today, and then reestablishing communication, and then working back up to that stress and reestablishing communication, and always leaving the session having reestablished communication, making sure that the muscles are contracting and that communication is open between the brain, the spinal cord, and the muscles using muscle activation techniques, but all along the way increasing how much those muscles can tolerate, increasing how much their system can tolerate before there is that disruption in communication. And that's what we see to be extremely effective for clients, regardless of the status of their joints. Again, whether they're arthritic, whether there are ligament issues, whether they are, a candidate for replacement, whether it's, disc issues involved or whatever, okay, cartilage issues, getting the muscles contracting better, establishing that communication, using muscle activation techniques, and then following up with strength training to build the strength and output overall can be extremely effective at not only improving the function of the joints, but also helping to manage and possibly reduce symptoms all along the way.
You know what I was thinking as you were describing that, Charlie, was like, when you have a joint issue, a lot of the population thinks about like, oh, maybe like I can go to Walgreens and get like a brace for it or like a support, right? And then like, in some ways it kind of helps a little. Like sometimes the symptoms feel a little better when you have that. But we're inviting you to actually think about, hey, what is the internal support system? What is the internal bracing system that I can build to support this joint? Because your body actually comes with those. You don't have to go to Walgreens to go get it. And it's way more effective than the braces. I'm not sure if braces actually really help, but they're definitely placebo for sure of something, right? But either way, your muscles are designed to, control, to stop, to move, to stabilize every single joint in your body. And so, especially if you're having a lot of inflammation in a joint, if you're a joint replacement candidate, you're definitely having a lot of inflammation in that joint, if you have arthritis, whatever you have going on, that is constant stress onto the muscles. And so that's why we oftentimes will use a session to really try to build up the tolerance of this muscle so it can handle the inflammation that maybe the structure of the joint is giving to the environment at that time. So we want to be thinking about, hey, when our joints are failing, we're working on the internal support system, aka the muscles, and we're thinking about it in two ways. We're thinking about first the communication. Can my muscles communicate to the brain so that we are contracting when we need to, not contracting when we don't need to, and so that we're limiting compensation so that this joint is being as supported as possible and as balanced as possible. And then we're thinking about building up the tolerance. We don't want to be on the verge of breaking down. The whole goal here when you build strength is to like build some buffer in. So build in like, the ability to handle a longer walk, ability to handle knee bending, the ability to handle going up and down stairs. Like the original story we brought up, what Charlie brought up, was talking about how her knees were kind of communicating to her like, hey, we don't tolerate this. I have to turn out. It hurts up and down. I'm not doing it very well. I have to use the handrail. And then after MAT and building up the tolerance of these muscles, building up the internal bracing system, building up all that internal stability that you can have from your muscles, she was walking more straight. There weren't those pain symptoms and signals coming from her knee to her brain saying, ouch, this is not good. She wasn't having to use the handrail, so extra support. So those are the types of normal responses that everyone gets when you build up the muscle system.
Exactly. So if you are experiencing a joint issue or, the structure of your joints is on your mind, like, oh, do I have something wrong with my joints or whatnot? Understand that the structure of the joints is what it is, but making sure that your muscles are strong and functioning well while not changing the structure itself of the joints can go a long way in improving not only the function of the joints, but how the joints are feeling for you, and may also help to protect the joints from getting worse over time, okay? There's two steps to that process. First, like Julie was saying, establish communication or reestablish communication between the brain, the spinal cord, and the muscles using muscle activation techniques. Secondly, start to improve the conditioning, the strength, the stress tolerance of your muscles using traditional strength training and more traditional exercise, okay? If you are in the Chicagoland area and would like to experience muscle activation techniques for yourself, that is our specialty here at Muscle Activation Schaumburg. All you have to do to see our availability and get on our schedule is go to www.matschaumburg.com. We have a big green button that says Get Started. You just click that and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. And if you'd like our guidance on using exercise to build your strength in ways that are joint friendly, that you can do right from home with workouts that take less than 25 minutes, that's exactly what you'll get within the Exercise for Life membership. You can get 30 days for this membership for free by going to www.matschaumburg.com. www.exerciseforlifestudios.com. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that is having joint issues, considering a joint replacement, maybe not really wanting a joint replacement, but knowing something may be coming down the pipeline for them, is wondering if there's something they can do in the meantime or just to help the health and function of their joints overall? Share this episode with them so they can understand the importance, the role that the muscle system plays within making sure that their joints stay strong, stay healthy, and stay functioning well. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to us and leave us a rating and review. Not only does it help people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise, it helps them find our podcast when they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us that 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.